Hi guys, Romans here, and in this video I'm gonna tell you about how I wrote the music for My Biggest Foe. My Biggest Foe has got to be one of the newer tracks that I wrote for the second album. Most of the songs had been written even before the first album came out, and there are certain sections of, like, for example, the 26-minute long song Vortex that I wrote specifically for the record. But My Biggest Foe has got to be the only song that I kind of wrote when putting the whole record together. I wrote this song between the mid-September to the end of October 2020. If you listen to both of my records, Pursuits 1 and 2, this is definitely the song that's gonna stand out the most as being the most out there, the most different track, considering that the IAKO BEI is mostly like progressive rock, progressive metal band with obviously a lot of the overlaps into other genres. My Biggest Foe is definitely the most different song because it's almost like a pure pop song. There are elements of like art pop, funk, 80s pop. I think that you can think Tears for Fears or Peter Gabriel, even like Toto. And I was actually listening to a lot of the synthwave music. Think The Midnight Vampires. That's what I was kind of trying to channel through writing this track. And as per usual, whenever I have some inspiration, the final product is totally different. Okay, so there are a couple of things that you can learn from how I wrote this track, so let's start. I often write the riff or the main theme first. Now, what does this mean? Usually when I write music on a guitar or on a piano, I come up with some kind of an idea that ends up being the main riff or the main theme, main lick, whatever, and this is usually what comes first. And it's usually that excitement I feel about that idea that it makes it worth working on and that I kind of try to maintain in the entirety of the composition. With My Biggest Foe, the main theme was actually the last piece of the puzzle. I already had the verses, I already had the chorus, I had the midsection, I had it all, and I was kind of struggling with coming up with the main theme. I was really thinking about the track Vampires from the Midnight, and I was just trying to come up with a melody that the saxophone could play, and finally I wrote the main theme. And I really wanted the saxophone to play that main theme, and Lucas actually did record that main theme on the saxophone. It didn't sound exactly like I wanted to, and I was even kind of pushing him towards having that raspy tone on the saxophone. And he did his best. Even when we went to the studio to start the editing and the mixing process of the album, this track still had saxophone playing the main theme. But I just wasn't really happy with how it sounded, so that's when I took my Korg Minilogue XD synth and I came up with a sound that you can hear at the beginning of the track. And if you're more interested, you can check out the video Sounds Behind the Track, which you can find here, where I discuss all of the sounds. And once I heard that main theme being played on the synth, the saxophone didn't make sense anymore. And even Lucas, when he heard it without the saxophone, he was like, yeah, it's much better now because it was written for a synth. So a synth should play it, not a saxophone. How to make a 3-chord song seem more complex. Now, what I mean by this, IAKO BEI is generally mostly like a progressive rock, progressive metal band. Like, you know, the second album is gonna open up with almost like a 26 minutes long song. Wrong Doors has all these intricate time signature changes and difficult things to play. With My Biggest Foe, I wanted to take a song that would be like a very simple pop song based on 3 chords. What I was actually trying to say here is that I wanted to write a song that would have been based on 1 chord progression being repeated throughout most of its or all of its sections. And the chords I used are not necessarily that often used. So you've got like a F major 7, E minor 7, D minor 7, and at one point after the solo I introduced the 4th chord, which is C major 7, but you know, for the most part you have the first 3 chords and that's what the whole song is based on. This has been done many times in pop music, like for example Katy Perry Fireworks. The same chord progression in every section is just arranged differently. Ed Sheeran did that a lot. So as I've never really wrote a song like that before, I took it as a songwriting challenge and I wanted to come up with a song like that. If you listen to the song, you wouldn't necessarily feel that it's the same same 3 chords all over again, because in the main theme, in the verses, in the chorus, we always have different rhythm, different groove, different accenting, different melodies. That's what makes it seem more complex. Even when we go into that little bit proggy midsection where you have the saxophone solo, it's still the same 3 chords. So it's not really about how many chords you use, it's about how interesting you make a certain chord progression, even if you keep repeating in the whole song. Sing with me, whoa, oh, 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 I shouldn't be the victim of an ideal I've said long ago. Why is improvisation hard to replicate? Whenever I write music, I come from the place of improvisation, where I improvise with myself essentially, and I try to come up with ideas that I then organize into a meaningful song. When you will listen to my latest single, My Biggest Foe, you will probably realize that each one of the 3 verses in the track has a very distinct and different melody. This comes from this like a 5-minute jam that I had with myself, where I was just playing these chords again and again, and I was singing whatever popped into my head, and there were all of these cool ideas that I then took and basically made the melody of the song. And there was this like a very cool thing that I did, like I stand against my biggest foe, the perfect version of myself that I feel deserves to win every round. And as I was improvising, I did this bit kind of on the spot. Save me from this empty feeling. And I was listening to it and I was like, wow, that's cool. Perfect. Da, 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 da. What? How does it go? I actually had to deconstruct that melody, find it on the piano and relearn it. And it's funny that you improvise, you do something that's really effortless, cool, and then when you want to replicate it, you're like, whoa, I can't really do it. So you actually have to learn it. I say, I yield. Ooh, 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 baby, I'm not like you. Ah, that was pretty bad. Say, I yield. Ooh, 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 I've done all I could. How to make a pop song as a prog fan? Considering that the IAKO BEI is a progressive band, the latest single, My Biggest Foe, is a straightforward 80s influenced pop song where basically everything is in 4/4 time signature. Everything is pretty straightforward until the saxophone solo. The drums stay in the 4/4 time signature, but the piano, the bass, and even the saxophone for the most part, this is basically you have the alteration of 6/4, 6/4, 8/4, 8/4. I really like this section because generally the whole track has this like very chilling atmosphere. It's like summer vibes. But when this section comes in, it's introducing something new, something different. At the same time, it's related to what we've heard so far. It really works. And the saxophone solo is just fantastic. Limits are awesome. Now, what I mean by this, when I was writing the second album, I wanted to buy electronic drums and drum machines and a lot of synthesizers and all of that stuff to kind of create different things, you know. And when I was writing My Biggest Foe, I essentially used this Casio CTK 900 keyboard, which my mom bought me like in 2008, I think. I might have been like 18 years old. It cost, today it would be like 300 euros. Considering the inflation, it would probably be around 450 euros now, so definitely not cheap. But whenever you see a keyboard with speakers, you know that it's not necessarily a professional tool, because all of the professional keyboards don't have the speakers because they don't really need it. You need a PA for it. But actually the sounds here are really cool, and the original sound that I used in the demo was You know, this very 80s sound. You also have like a little drum machine here where basically you can alter between two different types of the same rhythm. And basically this is the drum groove in the track. I recorded the demo like this, and this is what William, the drummer, kind of went for. He heard the groove and he was like, yeah, it totally makes sense. I'm just gonna do that. So essentially you have this like a more chill, more laid back groove. And then the chorus and the themes.
It's so profound. I gotta break free. Sing with me. Whoa, oh, 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 oh. I shouldn't be.
You can acquire as much gear as you want, but at the end of the day, it's about what you can do with it. And limitations are sometimes good, because if you have too much gear, it can be distracting and you may not use all of the gear to its full use. If you have limited gear, embrace it, because it really may be all the gear you will ever need.